Hello everyone, welcome to another video on my YouTube channel. I'm the coolest kid on the block, let's be for real. As you can see from the silly little title, I'm working on Prince Caspian for Icon Photo Fest because I have decided to throw myself into a photo shoot for him despite having very minimal time. I'm making this outfit based on one of them that he wears in Voyage of the Dawn Treader. I know it's not everyone's favorite of the Narnia films, but I like it because it's a little bit silly. And I love the costumes that they did for it. I love the little pirate vibes. If you could guess that about me, is that I freaking love pirates. I do love his knightly armor in the Caspian movie, but I thought that this would be much easier to make because I'm not very good with armor and it scares me, and also all of my suitcases will have a weight limit and taking a full set of armor would be crazy. So I've decided to do Voyage of the Dawn Treader Caspian. And I'm really excited about the sleeves because I have stared at them for so long now and I just love them. They're like fluffy and flowy and have a slit in them, and I'm obsessed with how they look. So I'm really excited to make specifically the sleeves for this. So I do have a tight deadline to sew all of this together, and that is Icon Photo Fest. And I have 3 costumes to make for this event because I'm not a normal person. So wish me good luck, and I'm just gonna jump straight into sewing. I've never planned anything a day in my life, so take that as it is. But step number 1 is going to be making a pattern and a bunch of mock-ups for the top part because I want it to be really form-fitting but also have that little bit of flair at the bottom, and it has gaps in it and there's a trim. It's got everything. And then second plan is to test dye a bunch of fabric because I really love the weathered-ish look of the top, but it has like this weathered look with grain lines in it that are lighter in, like they're lighter in some parts and then the bulk of it is darker. And so I have 2 ideas for it and I don't know if they're gonna work, but I wanted some upholstery fabric and I want to see if they'll dye to be the color that I want, because a lot of them have that texture with all of those lines in it already, but it just might dye the whole fabric and look like a solid color, so it might not even work. And then the other idea is to just use a normal regular velvet fabric and dye it to be the specific shade of burgundy that the costume is and hope that that works. And then I would maybe weather it to have those like wear lines in them, I suppose. And then if I have time, which I might not, is to make the red tabard piece that he wears over the top, because that would be so fun to have. But I really only think I'm gonna have time to do the top coat, the top with the sleeves. Top with sleeves is what I might have time for. And then maybe the shirt underneath. Anyway, let's jump into the starting of making these things. So, and stick around to the end because I'm really silly. Okay, thanks. An important step in making any costume is making sure you iron your patterns. And honestly, I don't do this all the time, however I did do it this time. I'm using this pre-existing pattern as a guide to make the pattern pieces that I need for this costume. I sew things in a very chaotic way, so this involved a lot of tracing, trimming, retracing, retrimming, and then measuring it up against myself to make sure that it fit in the way that I wanted it to. People who are better at sewing than I am would probably do this much differently, however this is how I did it. Then I cut all these pieces out of a cheap fabric in order to make my first mock-up. And ta-da, the first mock-up, however no sleeves because they were a challenge. As you can see, it is way too big at the back and I have to take all of that in. And here is the second mock-up piece with the back adjusted. I didn't video this because it was just the same stuff again. The fit on this is way nicer than the first one that I sewed, so I'm glad I did all of this tedious work in order to get it just right. Now onto the sleeve mock-up, and honestly I made this process way harder than it needed to be because I wanted to modify this pattern like a silly person. A process I definitely do not recommend. Hello, it's time for me to yap about what the hell I'm doing. So, I have this sleeve pattern. Number one, it is too small to fit in my sleeve hole because my sleeve hole is massive for some reason. I've made it ginormous. So I'm gonna need to add some more, correct, in the middle probably, when I cut it. But right now, the opening, well, this pattern, the opening is meant to be down here, in this little bit here, so that it sits, and it opens right here, and then there's a seam underneath, right here. But what I want is for the opening to be like here, and for this to be the seam and not this. So what I'm gonna do is, I have no idea. My brain is like trying to work out how to make this pattern start and end here. So I'm gonna film that and see how the hell it goes. I think I need probably 5 centimeters added. I don't know if I said that. If I didn't, I don't know. That's the plan. I also am watching Lord of the Rings. It's helping me get through this day. Let's finish this. All that hard work paid off because look at how good this sleeve mock-up looks. Could have gone around the table instead of climbing over it, but that's fine. I turned that sleeve that I made into this pattern piece and cut it all out, and then did the same thing for the rest of the pieces that I used. They all get transferred onto some pattern paper / tracing paper, and I cut them out using that. This will make it easier to cut out the real fabric that I'm going to use, and then I can keep these pattern pieces for later and they'll lay much flatter. And then time for a final mock-up piece, because gotta make sure that everything fits and works as intended. Then time to sew all of these little pieces together. And ta-da, this final mock-up out of those pieces that I made. The back ended up being a little bit too long, but it is a very easy fix. Ooh, adding dye to a pot to try and color match this really weird shade. Not quite the color I was after, but after a little bit of mixing it did work. Cutting out these pattern pieces, but I actually didn't end up using this fabric because I didn't like how it turned out in the end. But here's me using it anyway. Onto dyeing these fabrics, which was actually really fun, and I got the color that I wanted, so yeah. Here's me mixing together the colors that I'm actually going to use. That other pot was just a test of a bunch of fabrics, but I did keep all of that water and didn't just throw it out. Not sure what the hell I'm going to do with it, but they're in bottles and I will keep it forever, I guess. Anyway, color matching and testing all of these dyes was a really fun process. Absolutely ignore the splashes of dye all over the backsplash. Yeah, this is the actual fabric that I decided to go and use, and it is a nice velvet, but obviously it is way too purple, but it was a good base to use. Then I get to cook all of that fabric and make sure it turns out. Also, do not put your warm pot on a wooden desk. Now the exciting part of sewing all of the final pieces together. It's so fun watching it all come together after all of the hard work that I put into every single piece. It's turning out so good and the color is so amazing and I'm incredibly happy with it. And don't forget to press your seams because it really helps. Me cutting out all of these trim pieces but on the floor because I had no space on the table. That shrimp figure is horrible to look at, I'm so sorry. And more fabric dyeing to make the trim match the color of the top. You're watching in real time me turning my ironing board from white to burgundy. Ironing this trim to make sure it's easy to use and lays completely flat. and ironing the sleeves because they were full of wrinkles after putting them in a hot pot. Who would have thought? Very lazily making bias binding out of this trim. I didn't iron it at all, I just sewed it. Definitely iron it though, don't do what I did. But look at how nice the trim looks. Anyway, it did work for me, so I guess do that. Making sure those cuffs fit my wrist, and gathering the bottom of the sleeve to fit inside of that tiny cuff. You're also watching the slow deterioration of my right wrist because, oh my god, doing this hurts so bad. But look, it's all coming together so nicely. A new wrist brace has entered the chat. Sewing in the buttonholes, and then this will be all finished. Choosing the most random places in this house to film silly little things. This is the Caspian top, and I'm really happy with it. I love the sleeves. Like, look at them. They feel exactly like how they are in the stills. And I love the openings. So fun. The buttons I think I made too far over, so it's quite tight. But it's really cute. And I really like it. I love how this came out and I love the color. The trim's a little wonky, but we do what we gotta do. And the pants are not canon. I would love to make some suede pants one day, but they're fine for now. Ta-da! Thanks so much for watching the Prince Caspian icon sewing video. It's very chaotic. I spent way too much time dyeing fabric. I could have been making so many things in the time I spent dyeing fabric. Check out my Instagram for all of the shots I got at Icon for this costume and the other two that I made. And I hope you stick around with me for future videos. Thanks so much, friends. I'll see you another time. Bye.